All right, wonderful. Well, you all, this lovely woman that you are seeing in front of you is a dear sister friend. I like to call her my elder sister from another mother, none other than Joanna Hunter Iyanifa Omotinuwe. And she is someone who is a well-respected independent scholar in Ifa-Orisa tradition. She's been initiated as an Orisha priest for well over 3 decades now, Iya.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also an Ifa priest, an Iyanifa exactly, in the Isese or Yoruba Isese tradition. So this has been a part of her life, her work, part of who she is and how she gives back. Iya Joanna is also the author of My Journey to Aganju, the Orisha So Hard to Find, which is available for purchase on Amazon. And I believe that people can also get this book through your publishing company as well, Black Madonna Enterprises, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, prolific writer. And the reason that we gathered, and I'm glad that Iya Joanna said yes to me, because I found out about this fascinating book that is going to be coming out either late summer or early fall, sometime around there. And the title of this book that will be coming out is called Ifa, an Ancient Paradigm for the 21st Century and Beyond. And you, Iya Joanna, you actually contributed a chapter called When Mouths Can No Longer Fight and Breasts That Swing Are Like Ifa. Did I get that chapter title
You
correct?
certainly did. Long title. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So given my interests in my line of work, for those of you who don't know, my name is Iya DeShannon Barnes-Bowens. I have been in the Ifa-Orisa tradition for about over 22 years now. And I'm an Orisha priest as well as an Iyanifa, similar to Iya Joanna, just not quite as long. So she is an elder. And given what she wrote about, I was very curious and thought that this would be a wonderful opportunity to hear from an elder, someone who is a writer, someone who is an independent scholar and practitioner, and to just suss through some of these topics as well as dive into some intersections with the reading of the year that came from Ile Ife in Yoruba land, and to discuss that as well. For those of you who don't know, those of us who follow this tradition, there's a reading of the year that comes out in June. Is it the first Saturday or the first Sunday of June, Iya Joanna?
No, it's the first Saturday. And so this year that fell on June 8th. But since the Awishe actually started it back in 1981, I believe, and it has been going strong ever since. And that was one of the things that we will do. They call it the Arbonne Rigun Festival, and we'll do that the first Saturday of June, because June represents the new year. They're on traditionally they're on a lunar calendar, whereas we are on a solar calendar. And I find it instructive that, here we are. Um, January 1st represents the new year for us. And then about 6 months later, we, are blessed with the reading that also comes out for the world from Nigeria. And it's about 6 months later. So you have actually 2 points, I think, in time to be able to think about maybe what you read or in January, those of us that divine for ourselves, and what was read in the diaspora Lucumi traditions in January, and what is or what came out for the year in June for Isheshe, or traditional, those that are practitioners of traditional Nigerian Orisha.
Okay, Ashe, thank you for explaining that and giving the background. So before we get into a little bit of the content, for those who don't know you, I thought it would be good just to explore what drew you to this tradition and why, practice it after all of these years, continue to be involved as deeply as you are?
Oh boy, no, that's a question. Um, well, believe it or not, for the most part of my life, I was an agnostic, al almost atheist, or on the fringe of atheism. And I, but I've always been interested in philosophy, and I have a love for nature and music. All right. And so when I started coming around 1980, I guess it was, I was in New York. And after a while, I got this job because I had just finished grad school as a pharmacotherapeutic researcher, you know. So I had a nursing degree also at that time. And so, anywho, I met this woman who was also a nurse and on that job. And we got to talking one day, and she was like, "You're a drummer, perhaps you know my husband." I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Well, you'll have to come down to Brooklyn and visit and meet him and stuff." So in any case, it was she who, me on the path, so to speak, of giving me something, as she said, that you're bored, and I'm going to share something with you that you won't be bored. And she was so right about that, in terms of to ye father is no end. And so from that time on, I was just, learning and learning and learning. And what I learned from Chief Bay, her husband, was that, well, the music that you've been listening to and that you play, because I would go out on the lake, okay, up in Bear Mountain, and I would take my bongos and boombox and stuff and be out in the middle of the lake, like God only knows what I must have looked like, just beating those drums and stuff in the middle of the water. Nobody was out there. I could beat to my heart was content. I didn't have to address any questions of why a woman was playing drums and all this other kind of stuff. So back to those two, he, showed me that, the songs that you were playing by Sergio Mendes and Santana, those are songs of the Orisha, and I'm like, Orisha, and so yeah, there's a whole philosophy that goes with that. So I got everything all in one. I got a nature-based religion, or something that venerates nature. I got beautiful music, okay? And I got a philosophy so deep that I still continue, trying to understand some of the concepts, of Ifa. And so um, uh, that's what led me into this. And I laugh because, being an agnostic and not having an interest in religion, it's just really funny that, for all these years, going on, she's 40 since that time, that I have continued to just, she was so right, that I can hear her now. Siam. Of course I was, I told you that I could just continue to look at them from many perspectives. And being in New York at the time, at the Schomburg was there, the music was there. Many of the drummers and singers all were in that area, so I was inundated. And I couldn't believe, although I was, born in upstate New York, um, I'd never been exposed to anything like that. So that's basically how I got into it. But as usual, and since I didn't know anything, I didn't want to be a dummy. Okay, I had to learn more. Okay, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and it seemed like I would always learn something new, and they would just smile. Poor dear.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Ia. You remind me of my own godfather, my godparents. I have two sets of godparents, but one set of my godparents are in the Bronx. And my godfather, he has been initiated around since the mid 80s. And he
Mhm.
went over to Nigeria and he would talk about the scene in New York and just how vibrant it was with people practicing all sorts of different African traditional religions, or what people would call African indigenous spiritual paths, or what have you. And listening to you reminds me of that. I feel like there needs to be a collection of the stories of all of the elders of that time, particularly here in the States, and what led them, because I just find the journey very fascinating. So thank you for
It
sharing
really
that.
is. It really is. And you're absolutely right. It wasn't just the Yoruba, but you have the Yoruba, you have the Akan, you had the East. Most of them use some form of, I think, African traditions as kind of a base, for their schools and stuff. But it was amazing. All these things that were going on that, many of us that were, interested in doing studies and researchers and things just had no idea that this was existing. And so, and for me, it represented, oh, this will make a great study. And clearly, it became more than that. It became a way of life.
Mhm.
So there's many, many aspects. I think of this from the music, from, you know, people don't even realize, I think that we were represented when I say that the Orisha traditions in terms of ancestral veneration at the World's Fair. Uh, and it just goes on. And many of the plays on Broadway also, had some component of, African traditional religion. And whether you were listening to Mungo Santa Maria or Drums of Passion, all of that. And the house that I was a part of was also a musical one. So, I had that wonderment there of coming at this through music, and just picking that apart and understanding that the drums, was a type of language, and that the need to understand Yoruba, which, my godmother hired people to come in to try to teach us Yoruba and stuff. So there was just a lot to it. Every time you turned around, whether it be art forms, cloth, you name it, there was somebody that was a part of it, and was bringing that perspective, to the tradition. So, as I said, just pick a thing. You would not be bored. And of course, I liked all of those things.